Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr here today with the Mermaid Scene card featuring new stamps and dies from the Simon Says Stamp Send Happiness Release. This is the latest release from Simon Says Stamp, and I always love when I can create a card that only uses stamps and dies from a single stamp and die set. So it really kind of helps keep the cost of the card down a bit. I also used some stencils that I already had in my stash to complete the scene. First, we are going to stamp the two mermaid tails from the brand new Be a Mermaid stamp set on some Bristol smooth cardstock using Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder. I like to go ahead and stamp this twice to make sure I get a really good impression with that clear embossing ink, as these are really detailed images. I'm sprinkling on that Simon Says Stamp white fine detail embossing powder and removing any stray embossing flakes with a dry paintbrush. Then I'm going to take my heat tool and heat set these designs. I know with it being white on white, it can be really hard to see. Hopefully once I start adding some of the color to these mermaid tails, it will make them a little bit easier to see that beautiful design. I really love the size, scale, and design of these mermaid tails. They are perfect. Today I am using the Karin Brushmarker Pro markers on the Bristol Smooth cardstock with a water brush pen to paint in the color. I have really been loving playing with these markers that are new to me. They are not brand new on the market. They've been out for a while, but it took me forever to get on board. I tend to be a little slow jumping on board with things like this, but I am really loving them. One of the best things about these markers is that it takes very little of the ink to get a lot of color. So you can see I am really just kind of touching that color to the scales and things of the mermaid tail, even to the fins, and then I'm blending out with a water brush pen. I am doing some rainbow mermaid tails, which ended up turning out amazing. I really love how they turned out, but we're doing a whole spectrum of color. I have listed the exact Karin Brushmarker Pro markers I'm using across the top of the screen. If at any time you're wondering exactly which marker I use to color, you can find that information there, and I've also listed it out on my blog in the supply list. So you can find that either here on YouTube or over on my blog. I am just kind of working my way through all the colors here. I started with those purples and kind of lilac colors for the fins on this first mermaid tail. And then we're just simply adding rainbow color in the scallops there. And then I even went back and deepened and darkened the color of my mermaid tail with a little bit more of the plum color over top of the red lilac, and then we'll add in some more of the red lilac to kind of lighten that underside of the fin. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side of this fin before moving on to the second mermaid tail. Now the second mermaid tail is a little bit different design, so it's going to have more I want to call them stripes in the fin. So I actually ended up coloring them all different colors, which turned out really fun. And it's going to be all the same colors you see here, and then the rest of the mermaid tail is going to be just like this with the rainbow color. Now because these are pretty wet, I like the water brush pen. It does control how much water you're using, and it also gives you that nice variation in color, so it goes from dark to light. You can always go back over the areas later on if you want to deepen and darken an area. Once it's dry, you can kind of hit that with a little bit more color or add another color on top, like I did with the purplish fin on the first mermaid tail, and then blend that color out. I applied very, very little of the actual marker to the cardstock, and then I blended the rest out with a water brush pen. You can use water and a fine tip paintbrush as well. This is just what I tend to gravitate towards because I'm comfortable with it, but I did order some new paintbrushes that are coming, and I'm going to try them out with these markers, so I will be letting you guys know about that in an upcoming video. So let's go ahead now and finish out the mermaid tail just like we did before. You can see adding just tiny bits of color, and with that little touch of the tip of the marker, look at how much color you get on your cardstock. It's just so amazing. I love these colors. I did purchase the largest box of the Karin Brushmarker Pro. I wanted all the colors. I wanted to really give them a try. So you will be seeing quite a few videos of them, or of me using them, coming up, just because I really want to try them out with lots of different coloring styles. So this is more of a watercolor inside an embossed line style. I want to try no line coloring with them, all kinds of things. I am not much of a letterer, but if you do some calligraphy style lettering, I know that many artists use them for that, and they work really, really well. They've got a fantastic fine tip, and that brush does the wider lines and then the fine part of the calligraphy beautifully. Now, once I have these completely colored in, I will use the coordinating die, the Be a Mermaid die, to die cut these mermaid tails. I am going to let them sit and dry while I work on adding some color to the little ocean border that comes in this 4x6 stamp set. So this stamp set has the ocean water border, the two mermaid tails, some bubbles, some shells, a starfish, and then lots of different sentiments that you can mix and match to use. I am stamping and embossing the water border on some more Bristol Smooth cardstock. I wouldn't have to use Bristol. I actually had some scraps out, so that's what I ended up using. You could use whatever you want here. And I'm going to stamp and emboss with white, and then we're going to do a little embossed resist with Distress Oxide colors. And I'm going to show you a fun little thing I discovered while creating these borders, something I didn't realize. So I am going to use the brand new Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink. I was super excited to try out the latest color for the Distress ink collection. I'm also using my blender brushes. I know I've talked about these in another video here recently. I have two different sets, and one set I use for Distress Oxides and one I use for like regular dye inks. That way I am not cross-contaminating Oxide inks with my other inks. So I actually have two brush holders and two different sets of brushes. The little collars around the top are by Make It by Marco, and they let me know what color of ink each brush is for, since I like these black brushes here, and it's not always totally noticeable what color. I did end up, I started by adding that embossed resist with two Speckled Egg, but I'm actually going to do my first three borders with Speckled Egg, Broken China, and Mermaid Lagoon. So we'll just go over one of those Speckled Eggs with Mermaid Lagoon. So you can see that there's ink sitting on top of the embossing. And then I did spray with a little Speckled Egg Distress Oxide spray to give it a little bit of additional, kind of like a foamy type look of ocean waves. And then I wanted to dry the oxide spray. Well, I didn't realize, this is that little tip, that when I did that, I'm not going to actually have to go and wipe off the ink on top of the embossing. The embossing kind of came back out. It dried up that ink or pushed it off, I don't know what, but it made my embossed lines super white again. So I was really, really excited about that. I thought I needed a couple more borders. I thought they're going to die cut pretty thin, and I thought 3 was too few. So I'm going to grab Peacock Feathers and Cracked Pistachio, spray them with Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink. Again, we're going to heat set these. I'm just going to use a little water and a microfiber cloth to clean my glass work surface. And then I'm going to heat these, and you're going to notice as I'm heating that the white just kind of pops right back out from that embossing. And then we will die cut all 5 of the borders. So this is that little thin border. I think you could probably do even maybe 1 or 2 more if you wanted to, but I love the variation in color from 5 different colors of Distress Oxide ink here. On my card, it's going to go Cracked Pistachio, Peacock Feathers, Speckled Egg, Broken China, and Mermaid Lagoon. And just kind of a nice ombre effect of that kind of greenish mint color to a dark deep blue ocean color, lagoon color, I guess if you want to call it that. So I am just die cutting these, and then we'll set those aside while we work on stenciling our background. I did lay out my borders to give me an idea where I want my sun, my setting sun or rising sun, whichever you want it to go. I'm going to use the smallest stencil from the Trinity Stamps A2 Foundations Circle, and you can line it up with the grids on the back of the stencil, and I'm going to tape it in place with a little low tack tape so it doesn't shift while I'm doing my stenciling. But this is a 4 by 5 1/4 inch panel of smooth white cardstock. This is regular Nina 80-pound smooth white cardstock, and we're going to first apply Mustard Seed Distress Oxide ink to create our sun. Now, what is so incredible about these foundation stencils, they come in different shapes, is that you not only get the negative, but you get the positive part too. So once I have added all my color to the sun, I can add just the circle stencil over what I've already stenciled, so I'm not going to go over the top of it, and I can add my cloud background. So I'm adding a little spiced marmalade on top of the mustard seed, just around the edges, and blending those out together really nice. And then I will remove this stencil, and we're going to take the positive part of the circle and place that right over this on our card background. Once I have that stencil in place, I'm going to grab another stencil, the My Favorite Things Mini Cloud Edges, and we are going to create the rest of our sky with the mini cloud edges and Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink. And I want that to completely fill the entire background. I also have really been loving doing my clouds like this when I create a cloud background at an angle, not going straight across, having it really be kind of overlapping a bit and just kind of here and there. You will notice this is a super quick way to create a background, and I love how this turned out. Now we can remove our circle stencil and look at that beautiful sky. We'll clean up our work surface, and it's time to start adding our mermaid tails and those great ocean wave borders. I'm going to start at the bottom with my Mermaid Lagoon, and it's going to slightly hang off the edge of my panel. I'm actually going to keep that entire edge, and I'm not going to cut it straight, which you'll see here in a minute. I'm using just some 1/8 inch double-sided adhesive from Lawn Fawn on the back of each of these borders because it allows me to easily tuck them one behind another. I needed to start at the bottom so that I didn't start too high and had a whole bunch hanging off the end or anything like that. And so this allows me to very easily tuck one behind the other by just putting the adhesive in the center of the strip. I'm also not lining them up perfectly so that they are all kind of coming at a different area from the side, because I can flip this over and we are going to trim off the sides with our scissors. And then you can see by adding the adhesive the way I did, I'm also going to be able to easily tuck those mermaid tails into the waves. So we're just going to get rid of all of those extra little pieces. Again, I am not going to trim up the bottom. I want to leave that as is. And when I flip it over here, look how pretty that background is. It's the perfect little scene for our mermaid tails. Before I attach anything else, I want to figure out where my sentiment's going to go. I did place it in a MISTI so that in the event it doesn't stamp perfectly the first time, I can restamp it. I didn't have to for this card, but it always just gives me that peace of mind. I also can line it up exactly where it wants to, or exactly where I want it to go. I'm going to stamp Be a Mermaid with some black VersaFine Onyx ink here, and then we'll clean this stamp, remove the Be a Mermaid greeting, and add the phrase, "and make waves." Other sentiments in the stamp set include positive mermaid vibes, sending you a little vitamin C, and I believe in you. And you can use these in a lot of different combinations if you want. So there is our sentiment up along the top of the card. It's going to kind of almost be framed up with the one mermaid tail especially. I centered it right above that setting sun. Now we want to figure out where our mermaid tails are going to go. I want to tuck them into 2 different waves, and I did attach them with liquid adhesive. So I will pop the first one in place because it's really critical it doesn't go too high and cover up the sentiment. And then we will attach the second one with a little liquid adhesive as well. And those do slightly overlap, not a ton, but just a tiny little bit. Then we're going to take our background and adhere it to a white top fold card base. Once we have it attached to our white top fold card base, and you can see the great little water edge along the bottom edge, I'm going to finish my card with a scattering of the little things, droplets, pool hearts. So these are just little pool colored acrylic hearts that I absolutely love. We're going to have one at the end of Mermaid, and then we'll do a couple more up there for a little trio up high, and then 2 more right over the sun. They almost work as little water bubbles coming up, and I did color a starfish and a little shell there and tuck those into the waves to finish off my card design today. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this mermaid themed scene card featuring new stamps and dies from Simon Says Stamp. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says Stamp stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.